So my name is Brenden. I'm the founder of MasterTalk, the YouTube channel I started to help the world master the art of public speaking and communication. And I'm 24 years old.
What do you think people's first impression of you is?
Oh, they think I'm really nice, probably. Like, man, Brendan's such a nice guy. He's got his funky hair and he's, in his basement with his mother, and he's such a nice guy. I'm not a very nice person. I think that's one thing people get wrong about me.
You're not a nice person?
Oh, not at all. I'm pretty rude, actually. I just like doing important things, so I started the YouTube channel, but I'm not very nice. But that's the first impression people have of me, though.
They think you're like jovial and open and friendly.
Yeah, they just think, I'm a good person. They're like, oh, he like does the dishes and stuff. And I was like,
So tell me why you think you're not nice.
I don't know. Like, I think it's just like, I'm a lot less nice than what people perceive to me is. So, like, let's say I'm a nice person, I guess, but relative to what people think, it's not true. So let's say someone goes like, oh, Brenden, we have a party on Friday. You want to come? I go, no, I want to stay home and not go to this and talk to people I don't want to talk to. Right? I'm just very direct.
So that doesn't make you not nice. That makes you honest and transparent.
Fair enough, Leslie. You're the boss here, not me.
No. No, I don't get from you, from our exchanges, and even from just this opening, that you would be a quote-unquote, like, mean person.
Right, but you have to also keep in mind, I usually don't talk about this in public for some, but you have to keep, I'm a speech coach, right? So I'm really good at that, right? So you can't, don't judge me on my first impression. I'm a dangerous person. No, I'm kidding.
This is the best. But yeah, I think it's actually, you bring up a good point, because I actually had a conversation just the other day with Gigi Noth, who we just did an interview with, and she talks about the misconceptions when people see outgoing people, that they assume that they're extroverts.
Right.
Because I love to have people over and I love to throw parties at my house, but I don't necessarily want to go to your house.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it's not that I don't want to, it's just that I'm more comfortable in my own space, right? So
I completely agree with you.
I'm guessing maybe a little bit the same for you, where you're like, no, I really don't want to go to your party. I want to just stay in my own little bubble.
Right. I think the way that I see it, it's interesting that we're even talking about this, to be honest. Most people don't ask me about this, but I think the idea is I judge somebody by their actions, not what they say. So let's say, for example, like, let's say I tell you in this interview how great I am and all that stuff, but I don't really share free information with people. I don't try to help people or make resources. Then you shouldn't believe me, right? If there's a misalignment between what I'm saying and the actions that I convey, then that's somebody you shouldn't trust. But I think a lot of us get flawed into thinking that people who speak really well are actually good people.
I agree with everything you just said. And part of the whole motivation for doing this show is because I think people judge people, like you said, either on what they say or their visual impression, and not necessarily an interaction with said person. And
Absolutely.
I think that if you are true to your word, it will come through, like you said, more in your actions than it will in me just telling you I'm honest. Absolutely.
Definitely on the same page.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see by the end of this if I change my opinion and I think you're mean. But as of right now, you haven't convinced me.
Fair enough.
How did you get to doing what you're doing, being a public speaking coach and teaching people not to be mean?
Yeah, it's a great way to start this conversation. So there's a quick story about me. I was 5 years old, right? And my parents sent me to French school. And the reason they did that was I'm from Montreal. It's a city in Canada. And in that city, you need to know how to speak French and English to do well in the city. So for the first 15 years of my life, not only was I uncomfortable with the idea of presenting, I had to present in a language I didn't even know. So I would just go up to like grade 7 or grade 2 or 3 and just look at the audience and go, bonjour, and then start to freak out. So it was really challenging. But when I went to university, I did these things called case competitions. So think of it like, it's like being on a sports team, but for nerds. I think that's a good analogy. So other guys my age kind of like watched college football or, played soccer or rugby, something none of which I found any interest in whatsoever. I would still eat the same junk food they would, but instead of watching football games, I would watch other people present. I know this is odd, but there's like a subculture in the world where people present a lot for fun, and we do this competitively. So suffice to say, I presented 3 times a week for 3 years, presented over 500 times, coached dozens of people on communication, and got my dream corporate job in consulting, which was the aim. And then after that, I kind of just said, what do I do to make an impact in the world? I don't want to just die and like make money. And that's when the idea for MasterTalk came, because I realized that a lot of the information in the world stuck in communication. I wanted to do something about it.
I love that though. And I think that communication is key, right? And people say when they're in intimate relationships, they talk about how important communication is. But I think that communication is key in every relationship. So, what is the big takeaway that you got from your presentations growing up? What would be something you can definitively pinpoint and say, I learned that?
That's a great question. I definitely have an answer for case competition specifically, but since you asked me growing up for French presentations, I would say the big thing is doing the harder thing. So, for example, if you're scared of presenting at your meetings at work, then do hundreds of meetings. If you're scared of presenting something you know something in, present something you know nothing in. Right? There's an exercise we can do today if you want called the random word exercise, where you just give me a random word and I have to make a presentation out of it. So if you can do that, then when you're presenting, whether you like cupcakes or baking or Spartan races, you can share that with people because you know what you're talking about. You know your expertise. So it's about doing the harder thing.
I agree with that. I was mentoring someone in sales, and she and I were out, and she was talking about 2 different products, and I said, well, I know we aren't really working together today for that reason, but I do want to give you some feedback. It seems like you're more confident in the first product you talked about than the second. And she said, how did you pick up on that in one conversation? And I said, it's just the way that your whole body changed when you started talking about it. And I said, can I make a suggestion? Kind of like what you said. I said, pick one thing in one sentence and do that over and over again until it resonates for you and it's natural. And she's like, that's a great advice. So same concept of what you were saying, but just applying it to something specific.
Right, I love that. And to build on what you're saying there, Leslie, let's say public speaking is like juggling 18 balls at the same time. Eye contact, ums and ahs, silences, the way that I change my vocal tones. I'm doing all of these 18 things at the same time. So if we get lost in those 18 things, like I just paused right now for effect, then we start to get worried because we're like, oh, I got to do all this stuff. But if we focus on one ball at a time, when we're starting to juggle 6 things, we go, wow, we're pretty good at this juggling thing, and then we can do 18.
And do you find that, or do you cover this in your public speaking, the awkward silence?
Yes, absolutely. Not exactly by that term, but I'm happy to discuss that.
Yeah,
so there's
please.
2 types of pauses. Yeah, of course, I'm happy to. So there's 2 types of pauses, right? The awkward silence and the silence that grabs attention. But the difference isn't that big. It's still the same silence. It's just the way that we perceive it. So I'll give you an example. The way that you practice this is what I call long stares. So when I work with people or students, you can do this with yourself, with your friends, stare at them for 20 seconds longer than you would otherwise. So when I coach people, I make them stare at me while they're presenting and make them pause for 2 minutes. And the secret is that the best speakers in the world can pause indefinitely and not make it seem awkward at all. Obviously, we don't have forever, so don't take my word for it. But the idea is simple, right? If you can pause forever, then when you pause, it doesn't look awkward anymore. But it's just something you practice. So one exercise super easy that people can do, if you have a partner or a family member in your house, just look at them for 30 seconds longer. It'll freak them out, but they'll appreciate it. Trust me.
I think that it's interesting, but I think also too in speaking and communicating, and especially in a speech that you're giving, that pause, that dramatic pause, or whatever you want to refer to it as, to let the whatever you're saying resonate without just skipping over it and inserting them in the right places, correct me if I'm wrong, is probably beneficial.
You're absolutely right, Leslie. And the way that I see this is what I call the repeatable presentation. So if you present the same thing over and over again, then you're going to get much more comfortable with the content, and you're going to ask yourself very different questions. Like, what emotions am I conveying here? In the way that I'm presenting to Leslie right now, the audience that she has, how am I conveying myself? Do my ideas stick? Do they make sense? Do they not make sense? And that's when we start to weave in silences as well.
And do you ever, when presenting, do you ever get that internal monologue that's going completely the opposite direction as your mouth?
Can you elaborate on that?
So, is as you're talking and you are speaking about whatever topic you're speaking on, do you have that internal dialogue that is like thinking of the next place or the next topic or where you want to go for lunch or dinner? And how do you stay focused?
Yeah, that's a challenging one. I think the way that I see it, Leslie, is the way that you focus on your audience and you focus on your presentation is by talking to your audience, not thinking about them. So I'll give you an example. A lot of people, when you speak to people, you go, hey, I wonder who's going to be my audience. And then I'll talk to them and like figure it out. But what the best speakers in the world do is that they actually have real conversations with them. I know this seems simple, but it's not as simple as most people think. So when I'm presenting to a 7-year-old, 30 minutes before my talk starts, I sit next to them and I go, how's your day going? And they go, oh, good. And then I speak to them for 30 minutes and I kind of understand their psychology and I start to understand the impact that I'm trying to make in that presentation. And when it starts to become less about you and more about them, then you start to get razor focused. So let's say somebody who doesn't do this exercise, they go, oh, this 7-year-old is so cute. Like, I'm just going to present this presentation, do my best, and you suck because you're not actually thinking about the audience. But if you spend some time looking at them, thinking about them, talking to them, you start to realize really quickly that, hey, no one has told Rebecca in her life that she can be a great speaker. I need to be that person. Because if I'm not, then nobody else in her whole life won't do it. Now the frame of mind that you're taking that presentation is completely different, trust me.
But I love that. And it's funny because I've been in sales for years, and so listening to you speak just even about giving a speech is the same way I think about giving a presentation to a customer. Right. Is if I go in with the way I want to present in mind, am I going to engage them?
Exactly.
So tell me about your favorite place you've ever spoken or presented.
That's tough. I would say, it was this keynote I gave to a group of 400 kids in Montreal. They were working on an impact project. It's a 3-day project where they try and change the world essentially and make really cool, innovative ideas. It's really awesome. And I was the communication keynote speaker. That was a lot of fun. Just meeting a lot of kids and them like asking for your photo, and you're just there like, what is going on? It's very humbling. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Now, when you say kids, what age range are we talking about?
They ranged between 9 and 17.
So your last two examples have involved kids. This one was like adolescent almost. And then you talked about the 7-year-old. I assume you're passionate about youth and give a lot of presentation to kids.
You got it. So most of my clients are C-level executives, so people kind of know that, right? Kind of the weird dichotomy. But I started MasterTalk for the younger generation specifically. So let's say whenever you want to make a difference, you want to make a change happen, there's always two sides of the coin. The one side of the coin is Brendan's unqualified. He's 22. Like, what is this? He shouldn't be sharing public speaking tips. And he's in his mother's basement. What is he doing? But the other side of the coin, which is more interesting, is what happens if I don't do it? Who suffers from my inability to take action? And for me, it's every 16-year-old in the world because they can't afford a speech coach and they want to make a difference, right? Whether it's $100 for charity, whether it's this classroom presentation that bogs them. Currently in the world, there is no resource for that specific age demographic. So I started making YouTube videos for them, and then obviously it came with the clients came with it and all that stuff, but that was never the intention when I started.
It resonates with me because I am very about empowering our youth. And the thing that you said about, well, maybe if I don't tell her that she could be a great public speaker or that she could do this, who will? And exactly. I have this conversation with my fiance all the time. We don't have any children, but I have this conversation all the time, and I say, I wish that people would tell children that they could be and do anything they want to do. The world is their oyster, and the possibilities are endless. And so I am grateful that you're out there doing that.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it means a lot to me. We talk about in this show, when I interview people, we talk about building a world with less judgment, more empathy, and understanding, one story at a time. And these interviews are meant to connect people and make them feel not alone or open up their eyes to possibilities for themselves. But I just think that you're making such a huge difference, and creating possibilities for those kids is amazing.
Right. And I appreciate that very much.
Yeah. So, what is something that would surprise people to know about Brenden?
I speak 3 languages, but I can karaoke in 8. Yeah.
Tell me how that works.
There's a bunch of stuff like that. Like I dance still in my basement an hour a day. I love Justin Bieber. I don't know why people hate his music, or him. I don't know.
Hold on.
But
wait.
anyway,
Do you like old Bieber or new Bieber or all of it?
both for sure.
Okay.
Like old Bieber's really good. I don't know why.
100% believer. Got
it. Absolutely. So the karaoke thing, what happened, which ended up being a video on my YouTube channel about public speaking, by the way, we kind of tie those 2 things in together, is I love karaoke. So I used to have I still do, a lot of Asian friends, not to stereotype, but they like to go to karaoke every month. So they invited me once. I kind of just said, sure, let me go to this thing. So I got there. It was really fun. We were singing songs in English. We weren't singing well, but it was a lot of fun. But then they started changing languages, like to Mandarin and Korean, and I just went, but they're my friends, which means I have to go back to karaoke every month because I really find it fun. So I just started practicing at home, even if I didn't understand the language. And then I just got addicted. I just started doing with other languages over and over again. And the way that this tied back into public speaking, oddly enough, is that if you can pronounce words you don't understand, your ability to pronounce words actually exponentially increases. So let's say I switch to English, not English, but Japanese, and I go, Ohayo gozaimasu, genki desu ka, which is good morning, how are you? Notice how there's no accent in the way that I speak. Or the other language I speak, like French, I say bonjour, comment allez-vous aujourd'hui, which is French. I'm switching languages, but notice how there's no accent as I'm switching. That's practice. And it comes from karaoke. Because if you practice like articulation by sitting in your basement every day and going, I like apples, apples are great, you're not going to do it, right? But karaoke is a fun way to kind of circumvent that process.
I love that. So what 3 languages do you speak?
I speak English, French, and Tamil.
And what was the last one?
Tamil.
And tell me where that language is native to.
Yeah, it's primarily spoken in India, Sri Lanka, and Singapore.
I don't think I've ever been aware of that.
Oh, good. There's a lot of languages that are very... Actually, Tamil is actually a pretty big language, but I mean in the sense of, like, there's a lot of languages that we're just not familiar with. Like, in India, there's, like, a bunch of different dialects that I don't even know, right? And then Sri Lanka, too, right, where my parents are from, so yeah.
Nice. Well, I love learning new things, so I learned something from all of these interviews. Now I know what I learned from this one.
There you go.
So tell me what you see for MasterTalk in the next 5 years, and for yourself.
Right. So when I started MasterTalk, there wasn't really much to it. I just wanted to be a senior partner in consulting, make a lot of money, get out of poverty, take care of my parents, and live with it. But obviously, as MasterTalk kind of evolved, and I stopped going into my mother's basement to film videos, and I did this more seriously with better hair and better videos. It progressed a lot, and I realized that I had an opportunity that Dale Carnegie didn't. So for those who don't know, I'm sure everyone does, Dale Carnegie is the author of the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Sold like millions of copies. But the issue with Dale is he was born in the wrong time period of history, in the sense that we don't know how he speaks, we don't know how he sounds like, and we don't know how he presents. We just have a book to remember him by. So I have this odd opportunity because I was born in the right period of time where I can own in my own media company at a very low cost to democratize all the information. And since communication is something that doesn't get commoditized over time, when I die, people will have all the videos to still learn from me on forever, right? So that's the goal with MasterTalk. And obviously the income, all that stuff comes with it, but that's the grander plan.
But isn't it a nice reward for doing something that you're passionate about and that fulfills that goal of contributing to the world like you wanted to?
Absolutely. It goes back to this whole idea of me not being nice, right? I think a good way of summarizing this is the person who needs MasterTalk the most, I don't say this that often, but the person who needs MasterTalk the most is not the kids who listen to me. It's me. Because if I'm not doing something important with my life, I get ridiculously bored with it. right? So I need to do it. So that's why I spend a lot of money on production. I just need to be working on something. It's just the way that I am. A good analogy, even if it's a poor one, for those who watched Michael Jordan's documentary, The Last Dance, take it from someone who doesn't care about sports. That was a really good documentary. And the last scene of the documentary is what I'll point to. They asked him if he had any regrets, and the only thing he said is we should have went for 7. So what he means by that, the only thing he cared about was the game. And without the game, he's nothing. And there's not many human beings who are like that. I tend to think I'm one of those types of people. That's why I do MasterTalk more for me than anyone else. But the impact that comes with it is great, and I enjoy it for sure.
There's also has to be something that you feel when you have coached someone and they either come back to you with a success story and the empowerment that they feel after their next speech, or if you get to witness that talk and watch how they've evolved. Tell me about how that makes you feel.
Yeah, it definitely makes me feel, a bit accomplished, happy, and, at ease to see that this is working. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I coach a lot of kids, mostly the executives of kids that I coach. And, week one, they're like, oh, well, I don't know about this public speaking thing in school. That's not how we learn this. And it's like this very bogging, very daunting process. But when they coach with me, I treat them like they're the same age as me. So if one person wants to be a business owner, they're 13, I treat them like they're my age and they're a business owner. And I criticize their presentations in the same way, by the way. And in 3 weeks, you just see them transform from this very nervous kid to presenting better, frankly, and I tell them all the time, better than their own parents, frankly. Because the executives are very close-minded, right? And I always tell them that. Because they have a lot of trouble imagining what's possible in presentation because they've learned something in a certain way. Whereas when you're a kid, it's very challenging, or rather a lot easier for you to be open-minded about new things. So like a 7-year-old I'm coaching right now, when she starts her introduction, it's her first day at school. And she literally starts it with like this: the wheels on the bus go round and round, just singing. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. And she's incredible. Like, I was just like, wow. Right. So it's that imagination that I just love. And I'm learning a lot from the kids too.
So it seems to me that also a thing that would impact their abilities versus, like you said, sometimes they do a better job than us adults. I think also because not only is it easier for them to imagine, they have less fear, right?
People ask me a lot about fear of public speaking and where it comes from and what it is and what to do about it. And I hate speech coaches who say, drink a glass of water, breathe. Because what they're doing is they're acknowledging the symptom, not the actual issue. Right? So let's dive into that. Where do we give most of our presentations? Because that's where the answer lies. The answer for most of us, whether you're a high school dropout or a PhD, is high school. It's elementary school. And for some, it's college, university. So we're all sitting there together in high school, and 3 things happen. 1, we never get to pick the topic, and it's not something we're passionate about. 2, the students who are listening to us don't care. Not because they don't care about us. They love us as people. We're great people. They're worried about their own presentation. They got to present in 10 minutes. So they're in their own bubbles. So when you're presenting there, you're like, why isn't anyone paying attention to me? For the same reason you're not paying attention to them, because you're worried about your own presentation. Number 3, teachers are very well-intentioned, very well-educated, but also very stressed. 40 presentations you go through in 2 days, in 2 classes. They can't sit you down for 10 minutes and go, hey, Leslie, can we talk about your presentation for 10 minutes and improve and inspire you to communicate better? So let's recap. You never pick the subject, and if you do, you're not passionate about it. You have students who aren't a great audience, and you have teachers who are too stressed to coach you. And over again, this behavior gets perpetuated in everything. Arts, sciences, music, math, French, English, over and over again, we're taught to believe that public speaking is a chore. It's a responsibility. If you're at school, it's tied to a grade. If you're at work, it's tied to your results. The issue isn't drinking a glass of water. It's our perception. If we perceive public speaking as a chore, that's what it'll be. But if we grew up loving theater, we don't see public speaking as a bad thing, not because we're extroverted, but because we see it as an opportunity to make a difference, as a way to share an idea, as a way to make an impact. And if we all had that mindset, no one would be scared of public speaking.
I agree. I totally agree. Well, I have enjoyed this conversation tremendously, and I can't even believe we've been talking for almost a half an hour. But should ask you my last question that I normally ask people. But first, I want to give you the opportunity if there's anything else you want to share with me or with anyone that's watching.
So the life advice I want to leave people with is the following quote, which is my favorite one, which is the following: be insane or be the same. If you want to be like everyone else, that's totally fine. But if you're listening to this conversation right now and you made it this far, you probably want to make a difference. You probably want to do something important. So my advice is be more crazy. Don't you find it odd that as a 22-year-old, I started a YouTube channel in my mother's basement, not on comedy, not on vlogs, but on public speaking and communication tips? And then I started coaching CEOs at 23, but at the same time, I still live in my mother's basement. I don't own a car, and I don't plan on leaving my house until I'm 31. How do any of those decisions make any sense? Brenden, you're a grown man. What are you doing with your life? And that's the point. All of the decisions matter to the only person that matters, which is you. And once you get to that place, you can do whatever you want, whether it's MasterTalk or anything, and you'll do something important with your life.
I love that. Thank you for that. And thank you for your time. And last but not least, what if you could have the opportunity, which you do right now, and you were just walking around the street normally, obviously not in your mom's basement, but if you were walking around, what would be one thing, if you could only share one thing about yourself, what would you want people to know?
That I really about people. I think that's something people, like, I think a lot of people don't really understand what good people actually are and what they do. We tend to believe that nice people are people who tell us, oh, Leslie, you're so great. You're such a great sales rep. Keep it up. I'll always support you until the end. If you need any help, don't be shy to message me. Like, oh, that's BS, right? In my opinion. I think the real people that care are the people who tell you the truth. To this day, my videos, 99% of the feedback I get is always positive. Really good, amazing. My friends still laugh at me, and I love it. They go, you call that a presentation? I saw you present at the national competition in university, and you were good there. You're a joke now. Get better, right? That's why I say I'm not really nice, right, in that way. So I think the idea is, if there's anything I want people to remember me by, is that I actually about people.
I think that's good. And I think that because of that, there's no way you can possibly be mean. I definitely don't consider honesty, openness, and transparency and frankness as mean. I consider those to be qualities that should be valued, and I value you. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and thank you so much for taking out your time.
My pleasure, Leslie. Keep doing this amazing project.
Well, thank you, and have a good night, and we'll talk soon.